When I was in my late 20s, I had a career on track, I was popular, I had a busy social life. I thought I was invincible until crippling anxiety stopped me in my tracks. In this video, I want to share the experience of my first panic attack. It was a typical Monday, and the architecture office I was working in was pretty spectacular because it was on the 51st floor of a building in Melbourne. So we had an entire view of the city all around us. My head was literally in the clouds, and at 51 floors up, my feet couldn't have been further from the ground. As other office workers scurried through the laneways below, life down there was worlds away, perfect for someone trying to escape, not so much for smokers. I had a pressing deadline and a massive pile of marked up plans on my desk. When I held my pen over the plans, I've always had the shakes, but they were getting worse. I was also still a bit hungover from a heavy weekend. I just had this ominous sense of dread that at any second the designer rug was going to be pulled out from beneath me. I tried to close my eyes and ground myself, but I could feel the tower swaying in the wind. We had a bathroom with the most spectacular view of Melbourne. It was also a place of solitude when things got too much. So I ran to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, looked in the mirror, and told myself to toughen up. I went back to my desk and tried to focus on the work, but it was literally like the dark clouds were closing in and my chest began to tighten. Fight or flight was good in theory, but tricky to implement at 51 floors up. I couldn't throw an Eames chair through the window and scale the building, or wrestle some colleagues on top of a pile of fabric samples, so I ran for the lift. My finger pressing the button was the only sign of a man in free fall. Down in the foyer, the revolving door couldn't spin fast enough, and as I burst out onto the street, a gush of hot air hit me in the face. A tram rumbled past, tinging its bell. It was sensory overload. I'd always wondered how frustrating it must be as a tram driver, stuck in traffic to only have a little bell to ting like it's Christmas. Disorientated in a city I knew like the back of my hand, I found the only patch of grass I could find, lay on my back and looked up at the office, which towered over me like Mordor, and I couldn't fathom reascending back up to the heavens. In Australia, chucking a sickie is a national sport, but I never did. That day, I retreated to the safe confines of my apartment. I loosened my collar and lay back on my cheap sofa. The irony is the moment I stopped being busy is when the walls caved in around me. I started hyperventilating. I broke out in a cold sweat. I fell to the floor. I crawled across the floor. I thought I was having a heart attack and was going to die. My fingers and wrist locked, but I managed to grab the phone and call an ambulance. Within minutes, 2 paramedics arrived, and rather than strap an oxygen mask on and wheel me out on a stretcher, they got me breathing into a brown paper bag until my breath steadied and my skin returned to normal color. One of the paramedics looked at me like she'd seen it all before. She asked me if I'd been stressed, and I said a little. It was almost like I didn't even want a stranger to know I wasn't okay. They reassured me they could be there whenever needed and packed up their stuff and disappeared into the night to deal with real emergencies. In ruthless pursuit of escapism or avoidance, my body had put up a roadblock. Physically fit, I'd never felt so weak, but deep down I knew I was resilient and determined, and that the only way to get on top of these spiraling thoughts that were a big part of the problem was to start bringing an awareness to them. The anxiety or friction was actually trying to tell me something. I just needed to listen. That meant stepping out of the noise, and the only way forward was to build the courage to lean into some of the discomfort around the things I wasn't facing up to and take a good, honest look at the things I was doing so I could bring about change. There you go, guys. That's a little part of my journey managing anxiety. If you've had your own experience with panic attacks or anxiety, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time.